Your eyes aren't deceiving you. We are inside, and I'm gonna show you the most versatile way to can tomatoes. So we're gonna pressure can these tomatoes today, but we're gonna pressure can them in a way that's the most versatile, so you can use them throughout all of your recipes, and you can use them in multiple ways, and it doesn't tie up your harvest for one specific purpose. So I've got a small harvest, but enough to get a couple cans out of some aroma tomatoes. And we're gonna start these off now. We're gonna prepare them and get them ready to pressure can, and we're gonna do it. I'm just gonna show you the highlights. I'm not gonna sit here and drag it out the whole time, because quite frankly, I get bored doing it, so will you. But let me show you how we get these tomatoes ready and what to look for. All right, so we have a couple things going on here. We've got a pot here for the tomatoes themselves, and I actually have another pot going sterilizing the jars. And if you guys want to see more of a process about that, let me know in the comments below, and I can definitely make a video about how to prepare for this. But for right now, you have jars sterilizing and boiling water for 10 minutes. I'm waiting for it to boil right now, but this is actively boiling, and we're going to take our tomatoes and you want to pick ripe, good looking tomatoes, and you're just going to put them in the boiling water, and I just go ahead and I visually inspect them as I go through. Like you see this one here, this is actually insect damage, so it's from a stink bug that eats on the inside and then, or bites on the outside, and then on the inside it'll be black like this. So we don't want to use this one for this, but it is okay to eat it. You just cut around it. It's not mold. So we just keep adding them in, and they're gonna boil. And what the boiling is gonna do is it's actually gonna crack the skin, and I'll show you that process. So this is a 2-day harvest that I had, and I didn't have a whole lot, but I knew I wanted to make a video for you guys, because we talk about this stuff on the Backyard Gardens podcast a lot. And anybody who's flirting with the idea of starting to pressure can, this is a very good entry for it, because it's a way to save your harvest for a later date. All right, so now that this is actively boiling and the jars are in there, I have the jars and the lids in there, I'm gonna set the timer for 10 minutes. And that's just gonna sterilize it, because you want everything to be as sterile as possible. Okay, so there's a couple tools you're gonna need for this. You're gonna need, obviously, all this stuff. You're gonna need a canner, which will break out soon enough. I recommend getting a canning kit. So within that canning kit, you are going to get a magnetic lid picker-upper thing. And this goes, you'll see this later, how you go in and you pluck the lids up, but it's magnetic, so you don't have to stick your hands in the boiling water or anything. You have a jar lid tightener. So this goes on, and we'll be using all of this again soon, but you put this on, grips it, and then you can tighten it before you can it. And then you need a jar grabber. So then you have this, and this will actually, you can use this to pick up the jar, and that's really good because it's helpful. And one of the most helpful things is a funnel. This is a jar funnel. So it's designed to sit on a jar so you can get everything in there nice and neat. And what we want to do beforehand is we want to sterilize this, or, and when I mean sterilize, you just wash it in the sink. Because you, again, any kind of bacteria you introduce into this is going to magnify it over storage. So you don't want to do anything crazy. But this is really important. You can get a kit for like 15 bucks. If you listen to the podcast, I think the link is below. There's an Amazon link to a store that we created that has all this stuff on there. And with my pressure cooker, I always keep the directions because it has times in it, and pressure is the pressure can stuff. So as I look at this, I don't want to remember this stuff, but I can flip to it quickly and reference how long to can it and what pressure. So I keep this close by. And then for tomatoes, if you're pressure canning, it's optional, but I use citric acid, and it replaces the lemon juice that you put in there, and it adds a little bit of acidity. Now, if you're pressure canning, this citric acid isn't totally necessary, but it's a good safety measure. And a lot of times you'll see like put aspirin in the jars or something like that. Highly recommend that you do not do that. That is not a proven method. This is the way to go. It's either lemon juice or citric acid, and I just keep a jar. This will last me years, and I just keep this on hand. So the question that you might ask is, well, can I just water bath tomatoes? And yeah, you can water bath tomatoes, and this is a must if you do that. But since I have a pressure canner, I always default to it for 2 reasons. One, it helps me to get better at pressure canning because I'm always practicing and always learning how to use it. And 2, it's a safer method. Doesn't mean that it's not safe to do the other one, it's just a safer method. So we're working on this here. This is almost done. Real quick, if you can see right here, this is my ripening station, and these are all the peaches that I got off my first year of my peach tree. Super excited. So we've got probably 30 or 40 peaches right there. I'm putting more peach trees in, that's all I gotta say. But let's check on these tomatoes because I think they're just about ready to come out. Okay, so I have a slotted spoon here, and I can see, if you pull one out, and you can look at it, you can see that it's starting to split. That's what you want. But at this point, you don't wanna just grab it and go to it. You gotta put it in some ice water. And I've prepared an ice bath here just for this. So I'm just gonna take my tomatoes as they crack, and they don't all crack at once. Sometimes they're kind of difficult, but I just put them in and you let them cool, and that'll actually help the process of causing the skin to crack off. See, that's hot as fire. And I do this one at a time because it allows me to check each one individually, and then I just put it in. This is really the only reason why I have an ice maker. All right, so the bowl is full. And at this point, you don't want to smash down on it because you don't want the juices to come out. The idea is to take the skins off only. So we're just going to take some of this ice and do just like this and just put some of it on there and let them cool off real good. And it may take a little time, but that's why the jars are still doing it. This is a multi-step process. So the jars are still sterilizing. And while that happens, I'm actually going to start boiling some water. Now I have an electric kettle over here, so I just usually keep it going. And what that does is that speeds up the process, because when I go to put the pressure canner on the stove, I can just add the boiling water to it and it's already there faster, because this is just one part of the process. Okay, so once we get that in, then it's going to be time to vent it and then pressure can it, and then the clock really starts. So, and we're going to get into all that very, very soon. So the water that I have, you don't want to discard the water that the tomatoes were cooking in. You want to keep it on hand because we're going to hot pack these tomatoes, which means that we are going to put hot water in the jars, and that helps with the sealing process and the bacteria and stuff like that. That helps kill it. So we're going to reserve that water for right now, and then whatever water is left, we're actually going to let it cool completely, and then I'll use it to water parts of my garden or something like that. And then the hot water from here, I'll actually take that out, and I can either let it cool and use it to water some plants or something, and this is the sterilization water, or I can take it out while it's boiling and add it to some kind of weed or something, and it'll kill it instantly. Only issue is it'll kill everything else around it. So you have to be very careful about that. So we're gonna take our jar grabbers and we're gonna pull the jars out. This is where things start getting fun. So you grab them by the black handle. I used to grab them like this and that was wrong. You grab them by the black handle, and then we reach in and see how it pulls it out perfectly. Dump the water. And so at this point, this is clean. This is sterilized. So don't touch the inside of it or the rim. That's the key part. If you touch it on the inside or the rim, you will be introducing some kind of bacteria to it. So I have read that you can do this in the dishwasher, but I am a man of little faith in that, and the good old classic boiling water works. Now I'm going to take my lid grabber. I don't know the correct term for it. And I'm actually going to leave them in here, but since I have the camera right here, I'm just going to show you. And you can pick it up just like that. Okay, but I'm going to leave them in here until it's time, because I don't want to introduce anything to it, because the last thing you want to do is touch the inside of that lid. Okay, so hopefully our tomatoes are cool enough, and they seem to be. So we're gonna take our tomatoes now that they're peeled, and you just take them and you peel them. Now that they're cracked, you peel them, and at the same time I'm looking to see if there's any kind of damage on the inside of the tomato. I don't see any, so I'm just gonna discard this for my compost pile. And I'm just gonna work my way through. So I know that there's some that have a little bit of damage in there, and I am going to pull that one out in a second and show you. So here's one. So this is from that stink bug. This is not mold, and that's very important to remember. So I'm pulling the green off the top. See this right here? This is from that stink bug. I can just pull that out. Now, if it was mold or anything like that, like you had been waiting for your tomatoes for a while, you definitely, like if you harvest a little bit, and you harvest a little bit more, and you're just sitting there and they're actually starting to mold and get wrinkled and stuff, you do not want to do anything like that. Use that for anything. And you're just going to go through each and every tomato just like this. So I told you in the beginning that I was going to be telling you a way to make the can them easily, like most versatile. And this is the most versatile way, and basically what it is it's gonna be just canned tomatoes like you would get at the store. Like if you were gonna get like diced tomatoes or something like that, these won't be diced, these will just be like whole, we'll call them plum tomatoes. And that's the best way because, in my mind, because what that does is if you want to make a spaghetti sauce, you can add a couple things to it. You can add, you know, for me, for instance, I'll take a can of this and I will add basil and garlic and cook it down, and then I'll have a little bit of spaghetti sauce. Or if you wanted to make a soup, and you know, all soups call for a can of tomatoes, you've got a can of tomatoes. You know, my wife is constantly saying, hey, I need to make some pizza sauce. And the problem I have with that is it takes a lot of tomatoes to make a pizza sauce because it's condensed. And I tell her, I'm like, you know, you could go to the store and buy a 50-cent can of pizza sauce and we could save all of this for something else. So just keep that in mind. All right, now that this is done, let's add this stuff to the cans or the jars. So you see why that funnel is so useful. It's insane. And now you don't want to fill these jars up all the way to the tippy top. All right. I'm going to go about 3/4 of the way full. And I'm doing this way, like that's a little bit low, but I want to make sure that I make even jars. So I'm just going to fill this one up about the same, and then I'll start splitting the difference. So you want to leave room for stuff to expand and for the liquid to expand within the jar as well. And that's important because when it's canning, it'll start bubbling and boiling and all that stuff. And you don't want to do anything crazy. And see, this funnel keeps everything from the edge of the jar as much as possible. So now you don't want to forget about the juices. We're going to add some of that. And now I'm going to get brave. Okay. So anytime that you do this and you get the amount of jars correct, you're winning. And we are winning. So at this point, what I want to do is I want to take some of this hot water. I'm just going to ladle it out of the jar, of the one that I actually cracked the tomatoes in, and add it in as a hot pack. Doesn't take much. We're going to add that in. And then we're going to take our jar grabber, our lid grabber, and put it on. And you're going to see how I do this. So now I'm going to take it, and without touching the bottom, put that on, just like that. And then we put this one on without touching the bottom. So now that's on, and now we need our lid. And so it just goes on like this. I don't want to spill everything. And then when you put it on, just until it gets snug. You don't want to really wrench it down because you still want air and stuff to burp out of it as it cans. Oh, but you know what? I forgot to put the citric acid in. So this is where the directions will come in handy, because it'll tell you specifically how much to put in. For a hot pack, which is what this is, you want to add 1 tablespoon or a 1/4 teaspoon of citric acid to each pint of tomatoes. So what did I say, a 1/4 teaspoon. So you just take that. And this is just an extra measure of protection against bacteria and stuff like that inside of it. So without touching the bottom, we're going to put it back on. And now we're ready to can. So we'll set up our canner. So this is a Presto canner, and it is made specifically for these crappy glass top stoves that everybody has. And as far as I know, as of right now, it is the only canner that is really recommended for a glass top stove. And so there's a line in the bottom of it, which you can't see in mine, but I can feel it if I stick my hand in, and I kind of know about where it is. And so I put some boiling water in there. Now I'm going to take some of this leftover water from the sterilization process and fill it up to that line. You don't want to fill it up all the way for this. This is totally different than water bathing. So I want to show you, without the lens fogging up, how deep it is. It's only about 1/4 inch from the bottom of this jar. You can see right here. And so my canner is actually black because it got overheated at one point, but it's not a big deal. And so right now we're going to let it go. And you're going to take your top, and we're just going to make sure that our ring doesn't have anything on it that's messed up. So you just look at your ring, visually inspect it, maybe feel it for any nicks. I don't have any issues. And now we're going to lock it down. All right, so at this point, what you're going to do is you're going to wait for this valve right here to shoot steam, and it's going to vent the actual canner, okay? So this is a weighted canner. So as this shoots steam, it's going to shoot, and you're going to do it for about 10 minutes, and then we're going to cap it. I'm going to show you that as soon as it starts steaming. So let's let this do its thing. All right, so it's been about 10 minutes, and you can see that this is shooting out steam, and it's shooting it out really hard. And this, once it starts doing this, that's when you set your timer for 10 minutes. Okay, so it's been going for 10 minutes. Now what we're going to do is we're going to take our weight, and we're just going to put it on top of the vent. And now it's instantly going to start pressurizing. Okay, so if this starts to rock, that's it naturally venting, and that means that it's over pressurized. And if you're reading like where you're supposed to be, you know, usually things are about 11 to 12 pounds per square inch, but it's still rocking. That's a good indication that there's something wrong with your canner, and specifically the gauge. So for us, that happened when we dropped the top and it hit the gauge, and that's how everything got overheated, because we weren't sure, but we were able to get another gauge. So now that it's starting to pressurize, let me explain to you that process. So you can see that this is starting to go up right here, and that's indicating that it is getting pressure and it's gaining it. So I have my temperature set on high, and it's a lot different than just turning it down real quick and going to it. So first of all, let me tell you the pressure. I have my the guide here, and it will be, I'm going to pressure can it at 11 pounds of pressure per square inch for 10 minutes. All right, so it's going up, it's still on high. Now you have to think about this. It's not like driving a car where if it's going over pressurized, you want to correct it. It doesn't work that way. So it's not as reactive as that. I compare it to, because I have a lot of experience with, you know, piloting a ship. It's going to be very slow movement. So if you're going to have to kind of judge with the stove a little bit and your gauge to see how you can keep it at 11 pounds of pressure per square inch. If you go to 12, 13, 14, 15, whatever, it doesn't matter. You can still do the recommended time, which for tomatoes is 10 minutes. But if it goes down to less than 11 pounds of pressure, so let's say it's 10 pounds, you have to get it back up to pressure and restart your time, okay? It's very important that you realize that. You're gonna have to restart your time if it goes below 10 pounds of pressure, below whatever the recommended pressure. This one's 11. So if it goes below 11, you have to restart, but if it goes over, you're good. So just remember that. So here we're at 11 now. I'm gonna go ahead and turn it down. Now I know on my stove, and you can try it with yours, mine's based on numbers. So between 2 and 4 is how I can keep it at about a pressure. And I like to can mine at about 12 to 13 pounds of pressure. So if I walk away for a minute or something like that, I don't have to come back and restart all over again. I get a little bit of leeway on it. So right now it just hit it. So we're gonna set our timer for 10 minutes. And it's still going up at this point. So right now it's at 12 and it's climbing. So even though it's climbing, I can still adjust it down a little bit, and then that'll slow it down. And once it starts to come back down, I can bump it back up. And you're gonna have to do that a little bit at first to keep it right. But once you get it, and it's not a set and forget thing, you're gonna have to keep an eye on it. So just remember, that's kind of the one part about canning that's a huge pain. It makes it such a time consumption process. So there's a little pop-up in the back here. And what that does, let me show you. So this tells you that there is pressure in it, okay? It pops up when there's pressure. This little black one right here is a safety valve. Let's see, yeah, you can see it. It's a safety valve. If that pops out, that means that it's overpressurized and it's gonna release pressure along with this rocking. So those are the different components of the canner. So right now I'm at 14 pounds. I just lowered it. I'm gonna keep an eye on it, and it's slowing down. So I can probably lower it to about 3. And even though the timer's going, I have 8 minutes and 30 seconds left, it's gonna keep canning, no problem. Just don't let it go below the 11. And we'll come back in a minute and I'll show you how to set up everything to cool these properly, because you can't just pull them out and cool them. All right, so we've come to the time to cool the jars down and to appropriately cool them down. So what we're gonna do is you're gonna let this just naturally depressurize completely. The dial will go to 0, and then the thing in the back, the pressure indicator, will go down. And at that time you can take the weight off and you should have nothing come out, okay? So if you cool it off too quickly, it can overboil, and so, because it's still inside cooking. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna take this and we're gonna open it up, and we're gonna open it backwards so the steam goes the other way, because it's gonna be hot. All right. Set that down carefully. Everything is boiling in there. Okay, so now we're gonna cool it. Now let me show you how to set up the pad to cool it. All right, so I do this in a 3-towel process. So what I do is I take a towel and I just fold it. You want it as thick as you can to insulate the bottom. Then I'm gonna take my grabbers, and you're not gonna see this in camera, but watch, check this out. When I put it down, you can see that it's still cooking in there. Everything's still boiling. Now usually I do this with 3, 4, 5, 6 jars, something like that, but for today's video, we'll just do 2. And so I take another towel, and I'm gonna drape it over it. And I'm gonna put it on the sides, because the idea is you want it to cool as slowly as possible. And I'm just gonna leave this overnight, okay? And that'll keep it insulated, and it'll keep it, let it cool very slowly. So here's some jalapenos that I canned last year. And I take the rings off in order to store them. So when it's done, I take the ring off, and then I grab it like this and I pick it up just by the rim of the lid to see if it's gonna fall off. And if it does, then you know you need to reseal it, and that's okay. But generally speaking, if you cool it slowly, it'll draw that back down and seal that top. So that's what you wanna do. And that's how we can tomatoes. So it's the easiest way to do it. Whole tomatoes, you can use them for all kinds of recipes. It's very versatile, and it's the best way in my mind to get them to can easily, to just go across the board. So I hope you guys enjoyed this, and I hope you got a little bit of use out of it. If you want more canning videos, then put in the comments below. Let me know what you're canning, and let me know what you want me to can, and I'll do it. And I can even break this down to how to sterilize and do detailed processes for you guys if you want. I don't mind, because this is a really important part of gardening and self-sustainability and food security, and so I'm willing to do whatever it takes to help you guys out. So thank you so much for being here, and check out the Backyard Gardens podcast, available 2 times a week, Tuesdays and Thursdays, anywhere you listen to the podcast, and right here on YouTube on Tuesdays. Until then, see you guys.